all, this is Skate, and today I'm going to waffle on about the Jagdpanzer e-100. Now, posted up an e-100 video not too long ago, and someone said, will you post one on the Jag again? So I said, yeah, sure, because I know I had plenty of footage on the tank. As I mentioned numerous times, I have more videos than I have time to make, so I've got tons of backlogged footage. But the problem was then, I went, I quite fancy going to play the Jaegeru again. And thus, now I have even more footage, which I'm probably going to end up deleting at some point because I just will never get a chance to throw up so many videos. It's either that, or we have several days back-to-back of Jagdpanzer e-100 footage, which I imagine is going to get a bit stale, especially as I was playing the ISU recently, and then I went, ooh, I quite fancy the 268 now. So now I have plenty of footage on the 268. So instead of using the old footage from about a month and about 2 months ago in the Jaegeru, I just decided I would delete it all and just use the fresh footage. And based on my last comments, the next video, which is going to be the next day or so, is going to be the Object 268. I haven't actually done a video on that since they gave it the extra degrees of gun depression and a little bit of rate of fire buff, and then they nerfed the rate of fire buff. And after playing the ISU, I just fancied having a go again. As far as I'm concerned, it's just a more durable ISU. But we can talk about that in the next video. Let's talk about the Jag. Now this game has been very, very slow so far, and not a lot of tanks have popped up on that side, so you know when you get that sneaky inkling feeling that there might be something flanking? Well, that's what I'm going to investigate, and as expected, there is Zebachan. So I'm hoping to hit it with HE and don't penetrate. Which is not necessarily the end of the world, although that T95 clip before the intro, that was funny because we rammed him for 200 and we pretty much finished him from full health. But yeah, taking his tracks off by doing just HE damage isn't necessarily the end of the world, although it is highly amusing getting a full penetrating HE shot on one of them things. But it slowed him down enough for me to relocate, get another position, and try and aim in on him, and screw up another HE shot. Which is great. Now some people would argue, well, the Death Star would have made that with Hesh, and it would have penetrated, because it's OP and broken and ruining the game. You don't hear that about this tank. In fact, this tank doesn't get an awful amount of love. Quite simply because it is slow, thus it can be a challenging tank to play. But the plus side, it's ridiculously heavily armoured, and it carries that monster 17cm gun. Now I really like the gun on this thing, and I also like that you have the ability to angle the armour and bounce a lot of shots. What I don't like about the tank is that the HE only has 85mm of penetration. I think that's a bit unfair, personally, when you think things like an Object 268 with a 152 has 90mm of penetration, or the E4 with a 155 has 90mm of penetration. I personally kind of feel like it deserves that extra bit of penetration on its HE. One thing I did see people cry about, sounds harsh, sorry. One thing I did see people get a bit unhappy about was the heat nerf on this thing. It had 20mm of penetration removed from its heat ammo, and I saw people even on the forum say it's ruined the tank. I remember sitting there thinking, how much heat do you have to fire in a tank like this to feel like it's ruined the tank? You gotta be firing a lot of it. I mean, again, sounds harsh, but it's true. I mean, the AP on this thing has 299mm of penetration. That's a very healthy amount of pen, and that's a very healthy amount of armor it can push through. So from a personal standpoint, I don't see why in God's name Wargaming decided this tank needs 20mm less on its premium ammo only, and then didn't touch anything else about the tank. It wasn't overpowered as it was, so it was a stupid nerf. That being said, I don't think it harmed the tank. I mean, it's still got 380mm on its heat, and you don't really need the heat that much. In fact, it's very, very rare. You can pen the front cheeks on the mouse with the AP on this. You can pen the front of the turret on an IS-7 with this. Yes, you can do it a lot more reliably with the heat, and that heat will still go through the front of an IS-7 turret, no problem at all. So yeah, it's a stupid change, in my opinion. But all that said and done, I would still drive this over the Death Star nowadays. And in fact, I think this is a fantastic tank. And that's coming from a guy who has just shy of 2,000 battles in the Death Star. But the amount I play this nowadays in comparison to the amount I play the Death Star, the amount of games I have in this is only going to go up and up. I think I have around 800 at the moment. But like I said, just shy of 2,000 in my Death Star. And in the Death Star, the amount of games doesn't really continue to climb. This does. I think at the moment this is my 4th most played tank in Blitz. Followed closely by the T110E4, and just ahead of it is the T49. And way ahead of that is the E25. So, why do I like this tank so much? Well, it's very simple really. 3,200 damage, 299mm of penetration, 800 alpha shots average, which is only just shy of the Death Star. Then you need to remember, this isn't any old gun. This is a German gun. Therefore, it has a 2-second aim time and a 0.317 gun dispersion, which is very impressive gun dispersion for a tank which has 800 alpha. And you've got 6 degrees of gun depression, which is one more than the Death Star, but it just feels a little bit more workable. It's like an Object 140, obviously, compared to a T62A. Literally only one degree in it, but it makes it feel that little bit more flexible. And those 6 degrees of gun depression lead nicely on to the next topic I want to talk about with this tank, and that would be its armor profile. Now, I'm told quite often the armor on this thing sucks because the cheeks are a weakness, and of course that massive lower plate is a weakness. Now, I do agree, hiding the lower plate is #1 priority purely because it is weak. And if you are on the flat and you can't hide the lower plate, then you need to angle your hull. You'd be surprised how many shots I take in the tracks, and my tracks absorb it when people are aiming for the lower plate just from angling the hull. And then we get on to those cheeks. Yes, you could argue when you are pointing directly at something, those cheeks are a weakness. If you're using the full degrees of gun depression, then it does make them that little bit tougher. Then you have to combine that with the fact of, again, it's a German tank. You're not meant to point it directly at something. Much like an E-100. Between your shots, you angle your turret away. You angle your hull for your lower plate. This is much easier in that regard in terms of angling. As soon as you've shot, you turn away. As soon as you do so, you're angling your lower plate, protecting that as much as you can, as best you can anyway, but you're also angling those cheeks, which massively increases the thickness on them. And that, in my opinion, is the absolute golden rule. Look at that. 1,000 damage straight through the front of a mouse. There's only 2 tanks in the game which will put 1,000 damage through the front of something like that. And that's this, or one of them, a Death Star. Given the choice, I would put my money on this penetrating the front of that mouse cheek more often than the Death Star. Yes, it has slightly less penetration, 11mm less to be exact, but it has better gun dispersion, which makes it more reliable on its shots, and it has a better aim time. And this is really going to hurt that Leo. I was hoping to hit him for HE, but I'll take a ram. I'm more than happy to take a ram instead. But back to the armor. It is all about angling, as it should be with 90% of German tanks you will play. If you think those cheeks are impenetrable and you shoot at a target and then just continue facing it, it's going to penetrate you. It's not going to do it reliably and consistently unless it's a tank destroyer, but it is going to penetrate you. But that's where the angling comes in, and I can't stress it enough. This tank is literally all about angling. Now between my shots I will try and angle as best I can, and you will produce crazy amounts of bounces actually. And that's not to say that every single thing you come across is going to bounce. If you have a tank destroyer driver who is very patient, this is going to hurt this guy. Yeah, if you've got a tank destroyer driver who's patient and is waiting for those shots to get them on target perfectly as you're trying to angle, as you're trying to wiggle, they are probably going to make a shot because, well, 268, 390mm or 380mm of penetration on its heat. There's probably not much in the game which is going to bounce that. And as long as you're angling, I think the armor on this thing is fantastic. And exactly the same can be said for the e-100. Pointed at an enemy directly, don't angle up, the armor is really not very good. Angle it up, and that armor is fantastic. And that's probably the thing I enjoy most about this tank. Yeah, it's really not good with dealing with mediums at very, very close range. But you can side scrape this thing, and you can side scrape it very, very well. On top of that, its gun's a monster and it has fantastic armor. Yeah, mobility sucks, but you go into it expecting that because the armor is so good in comparison. I made a video actually for the e-100. It's quite old now. E-100. It's on the thumbnail. It says 8,200 damage because there was a fun little game in there. But in there, I go into a lot of detail how I try to angle the e-100, and also explain using Armor Inspector why it's so good at angling that thing. This is very much the same in terms of angling. The only concern you've got is if you massively over angle this thing, you'll get penetrated through the side of the tank then. So that's when you can, if you're against a tank destroyer, get a bit of wiggle on while you're angling up, and that will give you that little bit more reliability. Also, to throw it out there, if you're hoping for more depth in this video, it's probably a bit of a ramble more than anything, but I do have another Jaegeroo video on the channel which is much more in depth on how I like to play the tank. And as these two videos have shown, in the first game you can play it very long range and be quite successful at it as long as you move with the team. And you can also play it short range, providing you keep hard cover next to you because you're turretless, and you keep an eye on what's going on the mini-map in terms of medium tanks. Problem with being too close is the situation I find myself in now. That 50B is very fast. I am not, so we're going to spot each other around the same sort of time, and I'll never be able to catch him. What I might be able to do is try and fly another HE shell over to him like I did earlier, except this time I managed to connect through the gap in the bridge. And again, one of the beauties of having HE, which does 1,200 average damage. You don't need to penetrate to do colossal damage with the HE on this thing. One of my favourite things to do actually is when you see something like an IS-7 or an ST-1, anything like that, side scraping very well, fire a HE at the side of the tank, still do 500 damage and annoy the hell out of them. But in that one we had 6 kills, 6,988 damage, and 1,732 base XP. But that's it for this video. Next one I'm going to do is 268. I've got some fun games in the 268 I would like to share, and I haven't done one since it was buffed and then nerfed, so it makes sense to get another one done on that. But that's it for now. I hope you have enjoyed the video, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye bye.